I'm conscious we might have a few more people join us, but welcome to this online seminar from LSE Ideas, uh, jointly broadcasting from London and Belgrade. And thank you for joining us. My name is Alexander Evans. I'm a professor at the London School of Economics, Associate Dean of the School of Public Policy, and I direct the LSE Ideas think tank's Central and Southeast Europe programme. And it's in that capacity that I'm chairing today's event. I'm absolutely delighted to have three brilliant panelists join us from Belgrade, who are giving up an hour of their time to share their knowledge and insight with us. Let me first of all introduce Professor Slobodan Markovic, an old friend of LSE, who is both at LSE Ideas and at the Faculty of Political Science at the University of Belgrade. A very insightful thinker and writer, and delighted to have you with us. I'd like also to welcome Dr. Adriana Zakharevich, which I hope I've roughly got right, from the Institute for Philosophy and Social Theory at the University of Belgrade. Again, thank you very much for joining us. And Jelena Mandic as well. So thank you, who's at the Faculty of Economics and Business at the University of Belgrade. We're joining at what remains a highly challenging and important moment for Serbia, and indeed for democracy and politics in Europe. And in the context of Serbia's continuing protests, we thought it would be useful to gather insight from those really experiencing this firsthand, and who can talk to us a little bit about what does it mean for Serbia now, what may happen next, and what lessons should we infer from the messages that are being sent by those involved. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Professor Markovic to speak. Professor Markovic will speak first, then Dr. Zakharevich, and then Jelena Mandic. And then we will open up for the opportunity for questions online. So please do think about your questions and put them in the online chat. Questions are preferred to long speeches or interventions, but we will try and get round to some of those questions and have responses online before we end. Many thanks. Professor Markovic, the floor is yours.
Professor Evans, thank you very much. Good morning. First of all, my sincere thanks to the LSE Ideas for its decision to organize this event on the Student and Civic Protest in Serbia, and also for the coverage of the events in Southeast Europe. We have agreed that I would give an overall introduction. Adriana would then speak about the pressure on universities and the educational system in Serbia, and Jelena would provide her own experience of the protest as a participant of the protest. I will make three points. First one is to give an introduction to the situation. So after a very dark and authoritarian decade in Serbia, personified by Slobodan Milosevic, in the 1990s, pro-Western coalition came to power in 2000. During the following 12 years, various pro-European parties were in power, but they had to face very complicated legacies of the 1990s and the wars of Yugoslav succession. Nonetheless, they were able to introduce and maintain a semi-consolidated democracy in Serbia. Democracy, even in that period, could not reach the stage of a consolidated democracy, but was nonetheless a liberal democracy. In 2012, there was a great change in Serbia. Former Milosevic's party and a splinter from Milosevic's coalition partner, the Serbian Progressive Party, abbreviated SNS, came to power and have been in power ever since. During the first several years, Serbia kept the category of semi-consolidated democracy, and many leaders in the West believed that the most relevant politician who emerged in Serbia, its current president, Mr. Aleksandar Vučić, could be a modernizer, and also that he could help the resolution of a very difficult political issue, the issue of Kosovo, which proclaimed independence from Serbia in February 2008. These hopes did not meet expectations. The Kosovo issue has not been resolved and seems to be very far from the resolution 13 years later. Although Serbia progressed economically under the SNS rule, it started to show backsliding in terms of democracy. That was clear since 2015, and in 2018, Freedom House concluded that Serbia was not a democracy anymore, but a hybrid or transitional state or partly free state. But in reality, a new type of hybrid state appeared, not only in Serbia, but in the Western Balkans, the so-called stabilitocracy. The leaders of these states claimed that they could provide stability, economic progress, and regular services of national debts. And in that period, the EU countries had other internal priorities, and the transformative power of the EU did not really take place. While Serbia and Montenegro, for instance, progressed in negotiations with the EU, their democracy rating deteriorated. The democracy scores further regressed in Serbia during the COVID pandemic and after it, and so did media freedoms and indexes related to corruption. So in the 2020s, Serbia has usually been defined as semi-autocratic, semi-authoritarian, and recently some authors even suggest as an authoritarian polity. EU observers also had very serious objections about the procedures and fairness of the last parliamentary elections held in Serbia in November 2023. In the meantime, the ruling party, the SNS, became a populist, catch-all and very massive party, claiming to have 700,000 members, or more than 17% of those who actually vote in Serbia. The SNS further developed a long-term problem of Serbian democracy, and it is the partitocratic model in which party members get various benefits for their loyalty to the ruling party. SNS is the ruling party in Serbia at all levels, including all but a single municipality, in all the cities, and at state level. The political opposition in Serbia, although it produced very brave and determined individuals, has been fragmented without any single opposition party or group capable to individually win more than 5 to 6% of votes. This is very different compared with Turkey or Hungary, for instance. As a result of this, young people in Serbia became disenchanted in two relevant ways. Disenchanted with politics and disenchanted with the EU that was increasingly seen as a supporter of the stabilitocratic order. Some researchers interpreted non-readiness of the millennials and Zoomers to be politically active as their lack of interest in political and social change. And then everything suddenly changed. On November the 1st last year, the canopy of twice recently renovated train station in Novi Sad fell and killed 16 people. The train station was opened as the most powerful symbol of Serbia's modernization. And then the canopy fell. On November the 22nd, exactly 6 months ago, students of the Faculty of Dramatic Arts in Belgrade were attacked during their protest. Revolted, they blocked the building of their faculty 3 days later. By the end of the last year, around 85 state faculties all around Serbia were under blockade. After the students organized their rally on December 26th in Belgrade with participation from 100,000 people, it became obvious that the student and civic protest emerged. By the beginning of February, more than 300 places in Serbia witnessed at least one protest. In most of them, there are no faculties, no polytechnics, and in many of them, not even secondary schools. Therefore, it was not anymore the student protest only, but a wider phenomenon that since the end of 2024 became the student and civic protest. The second element is the features of the student protest. The student protest in Serbia has so far captured the attention of researchers for its size, duration, and organization, and I will say something about that. In November 2024, a survey conducted by Zoomer RS demonstrated that the Zoomers in Serbia showed very similar values as their peers in the West. Almost 60% of respondents in this survey, the Zoomers took part in protests in Serbia, and 78% of them did not feel secure in Serbia. They massively reject a strong leader and prefer strong institutions and the rule of law. And as their peers in the West, they support diversity, are very inclusive, and have much more inclusive approach to LGBTIQ issues and other related issues. Equipped with these values, students began their symbolic mapping of liberty in Serbia on January 22nd, when they symbolically took over the Auto Comanda Junction in Belgrade. Then they marched to other key cities in Serbia, Novi Sad, Kragujevac, and Niš, and on March the 15th organized the biggest ever held rally in Belgrade, which, by the calculations of the Archives of Public Gatherings, attracted around 300,000 participants. To gain international attention, 80 students cycled to Strasbourg and arrived there on April the 15th, and then 60 students ran an 18-day ultramarathon and arrived in Brussels on May the 13th. Along their route, they were greeted by European mayors, deputy mayors, diaspora Serbs, and also by some high officials, including Austrian foreign minister. In Strasbourg and Brussels, they had meetings with relevant members of European institutions and handed over to them letters of the student protest. Students in protest were able to attract to their side barristers, university professors, secondary school teachers, secondary school pupils, war veterans, taxi drivers, many entrepreneurs, IT experts, even many European mayors. The student protest in Serbia in the late winter of 2025 became probably the biggest student-led movement in Europe since 1968. One of the major characteristics of the student protest is their non-violent approach and avoidance to identify with specifically political goals or with any single political party. Spectacles of unity of Christian and Muslim students in Niš, Novi Pazar, and Belgrade have demonstrated that the student protest also had the potential to overcome dark legacies of the 1990s. Students originally insisted on their 4 demands related to the rule of law as a way to overcome state capture in Serbia. Their pressure brought some results, and prosecutors charged several persons for corruption regarding the fall of the canopy. Also, many judges and prosecutors signed petitions demanding from the president and the state to stop interfering with their autonomy. However, after the rally of March the 15th, it became obvious that students could attract incredible number of supporters, but that it would not by itself change the polity in Serbia and introduce the rule of law. Therefore, in early May, they reluctantly accepted to rethink their political involvement. They decided to initiate the so-called student list, the list of 250 candidates for MPs, that's the number of MPs in Serbia's parliament, for new snap elections. Not everything is yet clear, but available information suggests that not a single candidate would be a student, but students would fully campaign for the student list. Every faculty under blockade would nominate 2 or 3 candidates, and if the student list won, it would form an interim government with limited duration. Its main task would be to reinstall the rule of law in Serbia and to prepare grounds for free and fair elections. Mr. Vučić has repeated on multiple occasions that the student protest is a color revolution financed from the West. Except in Moscow and Beijing, his claims were taken with utmost surprise, particularly in EU capitals. And the students also demanded snap elections, but so far the president of Serbia has refused to call them. One could argue that what collided in Serbia were the values of the Zoomers and stabilitocratic mainstream values. Filin Bicart, to quote one of those who analyzed the protest, she is lecturer of Russian literature at the University of Zurich, has provided her analysis of the student protest. And in her opinion, the student protest in Serbia operates beyond the division West-East. Students have no leadership cult. They implement direct and radical democracy. And her conclusion is, this is not a revolution of long hairs and joints, but of order, moderation, and perseverance. And finally, what is the situation like now in Serbia? Serbia is now politically in a nowhere land. The Serbian regime has been shaken and rather delegitimized, but this did not really boost the popularity of the opposition political party, and the ruling coalition is still in power at all levels. Having that in mind, the idea of the student list seems logical, since the student and civic protests have revealed that student activism has magnetic political power, something that the opposition parties are not currently capable to do. As we are talking, the civic protest continues all around Serbia. Only in the last 11 days, NGO CRTA recorded 530 protests all around Serbia. And exactly today, 6 months since the beginning of the student protest. The main research question is what happened in Serbia between October 2024, when hardly anyone anticipated serious possibility of political or social change, and March the 15th, when the biggest ever recorded level of political energy was unleashed. One of the possible answers, I don't say that it's the only one, but one of, is that in a deeply divided country, an inclusive movement emerged. It may be surprising that the Zoomers could mobilize such a variety of groups, but it is less surprising if one takes into account the formula that students have used. It is energy and determination combined with their inclusiveness. This seems to be a viable formula of success, and it opens up a realistic possibility for the reversal of the wave of autocratization that the Western Balkans have experienced since the mid-2010s. Thank you.
Professor Markovic, thank you very much indeed, and a very comprehensive and thoughtful introduction to set the scene. Dr. Zahajevic, over to you. I think you're going to use slides.
Yes, they are coming. Let me just check whether... Do we all see this? Thank you. So Slobodan gave me a first thank you for having us here today. And I just wanted to say that Slobodan gave me a very good introduction into what I wanted to say, primarily because, as is expected, the regime now wants to obviously find the culprit for what is happening. And I will just start with the two quotations to explain what I want to say. So both quotations come from yesterday. The first one are the words of the Speaker of the House, Ana Brnabić, who said, "It was never the students, blockers, who blocked the faculties. The faculties were blocked by the deans, and the university was blocked by the rector who is a complete disgrace for the entire university." Also yesterday, the former Prime Minister Miloš Vučević said that the rector broke the laws by being the main participant and the chief commander of the usurpation and politicization of the universities. So this is why I wanted to give you a focus on how the academia, or broader, the students, the professors, and the school teachers are now being blamed for the whole turmoil in the country, and how, in the end, we are maybe seeing the destruction of the public education in order to end the blockade. So how all of this began. So on November 22nd, there were silent vigils blocking the roads in honor of the Novi Sad victims. And in front of the Faculty of Dramatic Arts, the students and the professors were standing in silent vigils when the passers-by protested and wanted to break the silent vigil, later to be found out to be also the members of the ruling party. As a protest against that, the students of the Faculty of Dramatic Arts occupied the faculty building in protest, and very soon after that, they were joined also by the students of several other faculties in Belgrade and Novi Sad. But in mid-December, all public faculties, but one, gave their public support for the 4 students' demands. As a result, by the end of December, 84 public faculties and 1 private faculty were in blockade. That amounts to 74% of all public faculties in the country. At the same time, on December the 20th, Ministry of Education abruptly stopped the first school semester in order to prevent the school teachers, who were already in legal strike, to join the blockades. They were surprised that it was not the teachers, but the pupils who joined the blockades and stood still until the end of term in their schools. In January and February, as I call them here, the months of uprisings, many things have happened. It's absolutely impossible to jot them all down, but let me stick to what is most important for my talk now, is that the second school semester was supposed to begin on January the 20th, but it didn't. And as of March, it was 70 to 80% of schools that were either in blockades or in a legal form of strike, so in some form of work stoppage. In parallel, different social sectors, and Slobodan have already mentioned them, joined the blockades or initiated their own strikes. On January 21st, the rector of University of Belgrade first publicly appealed at the Committee of Education and Science at the Parliament of Serbia, claiming that the University of Belgrade gives its full support to the students. The majority of professors do. At the same time, the informal platforms such as Rebellious University in Belgrade and free universities in other university cities in Serbia started to mobilize and to organize, to connect and organize. In parallel, teachers from primary and secondary schools also formed their informal associations, and the platforms, all of them slowly but surely started to communicate and collaborate together. As we have seen from the previous talk, the 15th of March is the crucial date in the last 6 months. I call it here the day of the sound cannon. And what you can see is a photograph that I made just 2 minutes before the sound cannon was used in the city center of Belgrade. This, what we see here, is a moment of silence. It was 7:10. So at 7:12, the sound cannon was used. But before the sound cannon, also many important things happened. At the very beginning of March, the revenge was taken on the teachers, and their salaries were reduced 50 to 100%. At the time, the IT community, again an informal platform, started to organize to gather the donations for the teacher. It is still in existence, and now it refocused its attention to the university professors. On March the 7th, so a week before March 15, a group of several or of some of 30 young people, let's say, who presented themselves as the students who want to study, or Students 2.0, set up the tents in front of the president's office. They, in that way, emulated or simulated the protest that the students who do not want to study, the students in blockade, were doing for months now. Some days later, we had a kind of opposition of two different opinions. On the one hand, there was a president and all his acolytes who were insisting on the fact that on the 15th of March, the students are organizing great violence and that everyone who will participate in that is going to be arrested. To which the rector of University of Belgrade responded 2 days before the event, saying that basically what the students did and still do, I just want to add, is only peaceful and dignified kind of protests, and that the conflicts that were announced for days must be coming from another source. Which obviously did happen, because on March 15, when there were at least 300,000 people in the streets of the capital, the gathering was interrupted by the alleged deployment of LRAD on peaceful protesters during the 15 minutes of silence. So this is just for you to see the Students 2.0. On the left-hand side, there you can see the tents in the Pioneers Park, and in front of the Parliament building of Serbia. The tents are obviously very similar in kind and of similar age, so to say. On the right-hand side, we can see the white tents, which is a kind of extension of this kind of tent encampment that is still there in the streets of Belgrade and absolutely blocking the road and blocking the entry into the parliament. And in the upper part of the picture, we can see those strange fellows that joined the Students 2.0 together with the ruling party officials who were basically occupying the park in the days before the 15th, but they're also still there. Now, Serbian academia found itself at the helm of the Colored Revolution, and this might be a strange development of events, but if we bear in mind that basically from the very start, so since the beginning of December, the regime unsuccessfully sought to single out the leaders of the student protest, and that it continued to somehow search for those leaders and the main culprits. Before March 15, the opposition was still the top culprit, and it kind of changed places with the students. Obviously, a new culprit was needed. So that one was found in the Serbian academia as such, but the main prominent face of it is the rector of the University of Belgrade. So on March 18th, just a few days after March 15, in a TV interview, the president said that the faculty professors who do nothing except participate in blockades will get potatoes. They will get nothing. And just a week later, that idea was borne out by the Ministry of Education in a technical caretaker government that issued a decree which effectively reduced the professors' salaries to 12.5% of what they earned thus far. In addition to that, the rector was really exposed to enormous amounts of smear campaigns, but then there were also situations that the deans were either attacked in the streets or they were summoned by the police, as well as the rector of the University of Belgrade, who was summoned on charge of the Students 2.0 for the abuse of the official authority. You can see the academics, or rather several thousand people, among them many of us from the Serbian academia, who were supporting the rector on the early morning of April 18th, that is Good Friday. Now, the effects of this, what I call potato, just to try to be funny, but there is nothing funny in this decree. The decree is basically that the university professors are no longer paid for 20 hours of teaching and 20 hours of research per week, since the ratio by this decree was changed to 35:5 in favor of teaching. As there are no classes, professors receive the 12.5% of their salary, which amounts to 170 euros per month. The effects of the decree are most intensely felt, of course, this kind of financial violence and pressure against university professors. But then what is only to be seen and felt are also the collapse of the accreditation system for academic programs, jeopardizing engagement on current and future, especially international projects, and weakening prospects for career development. So, were academics silent? No, of course not. I mean, there were many aspects of many situations where the Serbian academia tried to respond to this grave situation. Even before the March 15th, researchers who hold EU grants in Serbia have written a joint letter to European Commission, but unfortunately with no response. However, after the decree has been passed, all of those appeals started to be more numerous and more frequent. There were appeals towards the international academic community, very much with a strong response, but then also to the Constitutional Court of a huge number of teaching staff of the University of Belgrade. The Constitutional Court never responded. Then the Serbian Academy of Sciences and Arts also demanded the withdrawal of the decree. A month later, academic community appealed to the now new prime minister, who is himself also an academic, to consider the withdrawal of regulation, but nothing of that gave any results, even though these are just a few of all of those actions on the side of Serbian academia. And finally, that brings us to the current situation. The most important thing that needs to be said is that 6 months later, students' demands are not met. Then when it comes to the schools, primary and then secondary schools, after months of protesting, gradually resumed classes in late April and throughout May. And many teachers are threatened with dismissal or already dismissed. The new Ministry of Education, which is responsible for both school systems and faculties, is dubbed Ministry of Revenge because of the similarity between the words prosveta and osveta, but it's actually doing things as if to revenge. When it comes to the faculties, some of them entered legal strike. The majority are still in the same form of blockade. I'm sorry. While several decided to enter into something which is called asynchronous online form of teaching. And this is happening in the last 7 days. All faculties are exposed to the non-payment of funds for material costs, to fines, to inspections and reduced budgets. The illegal reduction of salaries for university teaching staff entered the 3rd month. There are frequent announcements of the cancellation of funding of state higher education institutions, and obviously the strategy is to divide and conquer, to divide the people at the faculty, to divide the faculty staff and the students and the like. On this Saturday, so on the 17th of May, at the rally in Niš, the president basically said that it is not the students who wanted to block the faculties. This is what they did because some of their professors made them do it. And there he also said that the professors will not get money until they start doing their work. I'm stopping here with a premonition that we are at the beginning of this destruction, because the new bill on higher education is in store for us. We are still speculating as to its direction, but there is a great fear that it is there to further repression against universities and professors and to strongly curb the autonomy of the public university. I have to say, quite sad that I decided to talk about this aspect, because this is one of the most beautiful 6 months in the life of Serbia, full of enthusiasm and hope on so many levels. But this is a kind of a cry for help, and also a cry for understanding of what is also in the background of that protests that we're having. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A very sobering account of what's happened so far, and as you say, the sort of actual direct consequences in terms of university salaries and the sort of the pressure being placed on the university sector. Let's turn now to Jelena Mandic. Jelena, you've been sort of in the front line, involved in protests themselves. Be very interested to hear what you have to say.
Thank you, Professor Evans, for hosting us today. And I also would like to thank my professors for managing and organizing this event and providing really thorough analysis of a situation and the analogy and history of the protest itself. We are facing the consequences of the past half-year actions that are really challenging at the moment, I would like to reflect from the students' perspective, why we started all of this, what it means to us, how it reflected to further civic population, and what are the pillars of all this movement. And when we talk about it, it's inevitable to mention our student requests, which reflect our values for solidarity, transparency, and a call for rule of law and equal rights. As collapse of railway canopy in Novi Sad happened, and that provoked sincere emotions in people and really a cry for an action. And as incidents kept happening, students organized in a form of plenum, which is a form of direct democracy with no formal central leaders, with no faces being exposed, with no single one of us trying to prone and to be a face of a collective values and collective attitudes towards how our institutions and our society is supposed to look like. And saying that means also trying to adapt through time, which resulted and really resulted into something that proved to be right way of managing this crisis, as the expectations of us have been really, really put high. And I would like to go through what plenum exactly means. As it's a form, as I said, of direct democracy, it means that all the student participants have equal vote, equal right to speak, and equal right to discuss their opinions. And then further collective opinions are presented through majority. The core and the organizational spiral is work groups, to say, but they have no autonomy in decision making. And all decision is being done through that plenum. And that on the part of every faculty and on the part of the universities around the country helped us in staying united, as in only 2 months, we managed to have more than 90% of our faculties blocked. The pillars of that organizations are the first request being, okay, we want to see and we want the documentation to be public. The second one being, okay, we want those responsible to face the consequences of their actions. And the third one being everybody that stands up and talk about and criticizes the actions that proved to be wrong in the sense of its impact on a larger society have to have their space to talk and not to face punishments just the basis of their open speech. The fourth one really prolongs the idea that Professor Zaharevich said, is to have higher public education more available to the public, to have better funding and fairer terms of participation. But then it, as we have seen, didn't come across as something that was a priority of the government. And that's not as the first reason, but one that in this moment resulted in a weapon against higher education in Serbia that faces large challenges in dealing with this situation. And as we go through this past 6 months, it means that every day on the streets of Serbia, we have student protests and the minutes of silence. It resulted in large protests starting at the second half of December in Belgrade, in more than 100,000 people on the streets. Then, throughout the time, students and we wanted to, due to large media blindness, to hear our story and to present it in a way and with transparency that we really stand for. We tried to reach that population and organized, it's the best word would be Camino. Camino from north to south, from east to west, and to inform and really get in touch with our nation. And that's something that brought us to higher awareness about who we really as a nation are, and what we really strive to have as a society. And that's something that culminated into enthusiasm and a hope, something that we haven't seen in decades in this region. And that's the most beautiful part of this protests all around the country. And all of that circulated back to the largest, and I really could say the largest student movement protest that took place in Belgrade on the March 15th, that basically all the public transport and from all the municipalities of the Belgrade. People were walking to together in the center, and the estimate is more than 300,000 people gathering there, which in nowadays terms would be described as probably the largest protest in Europe's recent history, which could be really inevitable to mention, to talk about. And our main concern on the top of that was public security, which really tells you about who we really are as a student movement in this country, and that everything else that happens and the consequences we face really requires each segment of our society to take action and to fight further, as the impacts of this really provoked and also woke up that hope, enthusiasm that the change is possible, but it's up to us. And if we as students didn't go through all of this protest, through all of this time, nothing of this would have happened. And now the challenges really are great, but now I think that we are more aware, more mature, and ready to fight for what really is right in this situation. We are facing parliamentary elections. We're hoping for them. And the autonomy of the universities around the country remain our crucial goal in ongoing student protests. And thank you once again for having me today and dedicating your time and interest in hearing what we really stand for. Thank you once again.
Yelena, thank you very much indeed for your account as well. And you know, obviously, as all of you have noted, these are some of the biggest student protests we've seen in Europe for a very long time, and you know, particularly interesting given we live in an era of digital activism. Clicking like or dislike is one thing. Actually going to the streets is another. And I just wanted to ask one question, if I may. I mean, I know we've got one question online. Please do, if you're online, please do feel free to add your questions in the chat, and I will come to them. But I just wanted to ask about this issue about organisation here, because in a sense, how much of this, how much of it was stimulated by that moment of response, in particular to the tragic incident. How much of it has been stimulated by social media organisation as well? So, Yelena, if I may, I just, well, perhaps Yelena and Adriana, I'd be interested in both your perspectives on in a sense, how has it been organised? The government, of course, has alleged that the Serbian government has alleged that it's been organised with overseas support and it's been aligned to political actors in Serbia. But can you just talk us a little bit about how, how day to day, week to week, both with the students, and I think earlier in the year we also saw lawyers protests, and I think some of the cultural institutions got involved as well. So can you just talk us a little bit about how people actually determined and agreed and organised to come to the streets or come to particular gatherings? Perhaps Yelena first, and then come to Adriana.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Okay, I'll talk on behalf of students and how we are digitally organized. Because Instagram has been our main public media in the first, I would say, the first wave of our protest, and our mainstream of information that comes directly from students. We intrinsically, entirely weren't organized like through the media, through the usage of, let's say, WhatsApp, Viber, and any else social media. We used Telegram as we wanted to protect our privacy and wanted to detect from any individual being targeted as the leader, as somebody who participates, and somebody who could be attacked just because they're part of a plenum, let's say. So the plenum remained where we gathered all together in the faculty in the rooms, amphitheaters, remain our main place for decision making, and everything else has been, in a sense, deducted, and all of that communication went through Telegram. And then externally, our messages were sent through Instagram, through Twitter, and then we created also Viber and WhatsApp groups to inform a larger population. But that was only the presented the only way we could basically just speak and to prove that part of our story. And then the streets, I would say, were the largest part of it. So the impact of that was basically, okay, you couldn't get in touch with what we do, how we do it. You don't really understand it from the digital point of view. And we also present our actions in a manner that you're familiar with on the streets.
Thank you very much, Adriana. Very briefly, is there anything you'd want to add from your perspective in terms of, particularly in the sense that, how has new media, how has social media been a vehicle for organising or gathering or magnifying, as it were, the effect of the student protests?
Well, I have to say that I myself, I wasn't on Instagram before the student protest, so I just, joined that social media platform in order to be able to follow what is going on. I can't say much about social media, but I would want to stress the role of rebellious university and free universities, because what came to happen is that really quite some of the university professors and researchers, because we are divided, the institutions, the faculties and institutes are very often not in the same place, and they are under different ministries' jurisdiction. So Discord was one of the platforms that was important for us to gather and to exchange information. For the researchers, that was of vital importance because we are not in touch with the students. But then also there was a way of people who basically did not know one another to really exchange, strategize, connect in various ways. And that felt like a community parallel to the community of students, but then also overlapping and also in a way being very much internally connected.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Well, look, again, please, do encourage you to ask questions. We've got our first question here from Alexander Ranjelovic, which I hope I pronounced rightly. I'm not yet 100% on Serbian pronunciations, for which I apologize. But thank you to LSE for organising this webinar. I won't read the whole question, but just say this is someone from Serbia saying it's very important to see the protests. But questions, what's the view here about the potential political strength of the protests? And I think one key question here is, should the protests align with a broader coalition or maintain a distinct platform? And particularly, I think in the context of, some of the debates about whether the protests should politically organise around a joint electoral list around elections being demanded. So perhaps, Slobodan, can I come to you first on that one? Because obviously there is that debate about, classically with student protests, the slight risk is we give flowers to the rebels who fail, right? The protests happen, but there isn't then an effect out of many social movements and protests. That question about transition to actual electoral organisation, translating that people's strength into political strength, is there some debate? Is there likely to be a connective tissue through to an electoral list, perhaps?
Well, first of all, I see the whole movement as the mutiny of Zoomers. And this is very important because it resonates with other European countries. We had elections in Romania a few days ago. And in the first round, it was a very low turnout, 52%. In the second round, it was 65%. And what we could see, because I was in Romania last weekend, what you could see on Romanian television was that young people were standing in line for hundreds of meters to vote in the second round. And this actually created a rather different result in the second round than expected. So the Zoomers, I think there is one problem with researchers. I also was victim to that impression that when you interview the Zoomers, at least in Serbia, and you ask them, would you like to be politically active? And they say, no, we wouldn't like to be in political parties. But then they reply to you, we are ready to change the world. And we ask how, and they said several years ago, by using clicks. And we didn't take it seriously. But apparently the Zoomers can really change the world to a certain extent, even by clicktivism. And the fact that they do not want to be members of political parties doesn't mean that they don't want political change. I think what is good at least so far, the students in Serbia have decided not to be themselves on the list, because I think that would compromise themselves. But they have decided to nominate some prominent figures to their list and run for if snap elections are organized. Of course, I should remind you that Serbia had elections in November 2023, so the next elections are set for 2027. So only if the government and the president agree, there could be, in reality, if the president agrees, it would be, Serbia could have new snap elections. But there is a tradition to have snap elections in Serbia, so it wouldn't be hugely surprising. So there was a discussion whether the movement was supposed to go into this direction much earlier. But I think that those who are not really aware of research, of the research done among the Zoomers, they are not aware how sensitive they are about political involvement and how divided actually they are. So by formulating 4 demands, which are all centered around the rule of law, they found one basis which not only can gather all of them, but can attract huge civic groups. And the fact, what students could do is probably by some calculations, they can gather at least 2 times more people than the opposition political parties, by some calculation more than 2 times. So simply their potential to gather people around certain value and around certain goals has proven to be very, very surprisingly high. And this means that also not only that there was a mistake about the Zoomers, there was also a mistake about the civic potential. And one more thing that I would like to say is that when X generation came to power, my generation, or a little bit older than me, in 2000, of course, boomers came to power as well in 2000, then the way how a relation of Serbia with the EU was defined was that there was a very huge support for EU accession, but no one discussed European values. The Zoomers, however, they really stand for European values, but they are skeptical about the European Union as an institution because of this stabilitocratic heritage in the last decade, in which the EU, while it was obsessed with its own internal problems, simply neglected what was happening in the candidate countries. So I think this generation is much readier for European values and for simply becoming a part of European mainstream. That is very surprising, well, maybe it's not surprising at all, than was X generation 25 years ago that just came out of 1 decade of total isolation. So I think that all in all, the students did exactly what they could. They had to think very carefully about political articulation. It was not an easy decision for them. And in order to keep this kind of unity among the plenums, I don't think they could have they could have made this decision earlier than they did. Of course, you know, if we want to have free and fair elections, we don't know who is going to win in them. But I would say that what they have suggested is a viable solution, but of course it will be tested hopefully very soon, and we'll see what will be the outcome. But what is important are side effects, and side effects is that people are focused on the rule of law in Serbia again. People speak about it, people discuss it. It has become the main topic, I think, for the first time ever, and that's a great success.
Thank you, Slobodan. Adriana, can I just ask briefly? I mean, like, you know, this question about political strength, because obviously we've seen these huge protests. We've seen the protests continue and persist. But one's still largely talking, is it fair to say, most of the mobilization has been sort of students and faculty rather than necessarily much larger groups of the community in Belgrade or across Serbia. To that question of political strength, I mean, how much, I mean, outside the question about will there be elections, won't there, who might be on the list, yeah, how much of a, you know, how much kind of weight do you think, how much weight of support do you think there is in Serbia as a whole for the expressions of appetite for change and reform and for rule of law that the students are making?
First, want to say that I very much agree with what Slobodan gave as an assessment. I basically would say the same. And in addition to that, I want to say that I think that there is a great strength, that there is a great support of the citizens of Serbia, and this time not only of the major cities, not only of Belgrade as the capital. I think that's very important to underline. And this is also the effect of what Jelena was mentioning, that the students were basically walking, running, cycling from the north to the south, from the east to the west, but literally trying to get into different villages, not kinds of villages, but different villages and smaller towns to somehow set themselves that we are real. This is really happening. It cannot be simulated. It's not something which, you know, you can be misinformed, disinformed by the media that the president and the ruling party are using. What I also want to say is that, for example, what might give us also a notion or a sense of how the election, if they took place, would turn out, would be this meeting on Saturday, a rally on Saturday that took place in Niš. Niš is the third largest city in Serbia. And the city which it has the one municipality where the ruling party is not in power. President was very angry with the Niš citizens. He wanted by all means to come and reconquer Niš because he felt somehow thrown out of the city after the 15th of March. And so that was something which was planned for a very long time. As always, loads of buses were employed, so people from all around the country were paid to come and appear in Niš, and this rally took place. However, next to that rally, the Niš students, they called for Niš citizens to rally in a kind of parallel, peaceful meeting, thinking, mindful of the fact that, that they don't touch, that they don't clash, so to say, which luckily did not happen in the end. But my point is, if students from Niš, who at that point in time were not all of them in Niš, if they called the citizens of that city to join the peaceful rally, to show that the citizens of Niš, those who really live there, will go out in the street and say, yes, we are living here and we are not letting the city to be just, swamped by the people who are brought here by the buses for the money that the ruling party is giving for that reason, we can think how those elections may turn out, I think. We can have a glimpse of that despite the incredibly strong mechanism that was in power for many years, something changed. And this is, I think, very important.
Adriana, thank you. Now we're almost out of time, but I want to come with one final question and ask for very quick, brief responses, if that's all right. The crystal ball. It's always difficult to look ahead, right, and know what might happen. And perhaps I'll come to Slobodan first, then Adriana, and then Yelena. But can I just ask you, I mean, what would be your one-line pitch about what do you think happens next? Will there be elections? Will there be tangible outcomes from a protest? What would your one prediction be? So Slobodan, you first.
Well, first of all, I should say that that in IR, our colleagues failed to predict the fall of the Berlin Wall, and we're not even aware on the day of the fall that it would happen. So let's be very careful. But I would expect that the president would call snap elections, but not when students want that, but he will probably calculate the best possible date for the ruling party. But I would guess it would be this year. And I don't see really a possible resolution of the whole crisis without snap elections because, of course, I'm for institutional problem solving. And I think that we could reasonably expect snap elections by the end of this year.
Thank you. Adriana.
I will be super short. I'm putting all my trust into the cleverness of the students who showed that they were clever all along, that they are strategizing, and that they will that they will remain being nonviolent.
Thank you. And Yelena, last word to you. What do you think?
I would say that as students, our intention was never to politically articulate, but as we embody responsibility as one of our core values, we really will pave the way and try to make them happen as we prove that through the time. And it's about the time to show what strategy should be used and how they will turn out. So stay tuned.
Well, look, thank you very much. This is the first time I've heard of ultra marathon protests. So not only are we talking about Zoomers rather than Slacktivists, we're definitely talking about a slightly different context here for protests. I'm hugely grateful, Yelena, Adriana, Slobodan, to you for giving up time. Thanks to those of you who've joined us online, wherever you might be. And can I say a huge thank you behind the scenes to Dave Sutton and Mary Hannah for helping set this up and run this effectively. But watch this space. Clearly, these protests, the scale of a protest, the substance, the debate within Serbia are material, deserve attention, and we shall all be watching closely. Thank you all very much for joining us. And thanks very much to our three amazing speakers. Thank you very much.